I still remember the way the house felt that night. Not loud, not chaotic, just strangely quiet, like even the walls were listening. There are moments in life when you can't explain why something feels off. You just know. That night, I had that feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just overthinking again. Maybe I was tired. But deep down, something was different. Something was wrong. I didn't know then that my own family was sitting together without me, discussing me like I wasn't even part of my own life anymore. It all started weeks before I disappeared. Things at home had slowly changed. My mother, who used to call me for every small thing, had started speaking less. My father's eyes avoided mine more often. Even my siblings, those same people I grew up laughing and fighting with, began acting like I was a guest in my own house. Not fully ignored, but not fully included either. That strange in-between space where you exist but don't really belong. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself every family goes through phases. People get busy. Emotions change. Life moves on. But there's a difference between distance and being silently pushed away. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. I remember I opened the front door slowly because I heard voices inside. Not the usual casual family talk, but something more serious. Lower tones. Careful words. My name being mentioned. I stopped right there in the hallway. I didn't mean to listen. I swear I didn't. But when you hear your own name in a room full of closed doors, your feet don't always obey your mind. I couldn't hear everything clearly, but certain words cut through more than others. He doesn't understand. It's getting worse. Maybe it's time. And then silence, like everyone was thinking about something they didn't want to say out loud. I stepped back quietly before anyone could notice me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought someone might hear it. I went to my room and closed the door, but I couldn't sit still. I kept asking myself, what was going on? What were they talking about? And why did it feel like I was the topic of a meeting I was never invited to? That night, dinner was unusually normal. Too normal. My mother asked me how my day was. My father nodded without looking at me. My siblings barely spoke. It felt rehearsed, like everyone was pretending nothing had happened. But I knew something had. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying the fragments of that conversation. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces around the table. Serious. Concerned. Like they were trying to decide something important. Something about me. The next day I acted normal. I smiled when I had to. I spoke when spoken to. But inside, I was watching everything differently. Every glance felt heavier. Every silence felt like it had meaning. And then came the moment I can never forget. I was passing by the living room when I heard it again. My name. This time clearer. My family was having another conversation. And this time I heard enough. They were talking about me like I was a problem that needed a solution. I froze behind the wall, holding my breath. One voice said I had changed. Another said I wasn't the same anymore. Someone even suggested that maybe distance would help. Another agreed quietly. No one sounded angry, which somehow made it worse. It wasn't hatred. It was decision-making. And in that moment, something inside me broke quietly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just something shifting inside my chest. I didn't confront them. I didn't walk in and ask questions. I couldn't. Because I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answers spoken directly to my face. Instead, I walked back to my room, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall for a long time. Everything I thought I knew about home started feeling uncertain. If your own family can sit together and decide things about you without you even being there, what does that make you in their life? That question stayed with me the entire night. I didn't pack much. I didn't plan a dramatic exit. I just knew I couldn't stay in a place where I felt like I was being quietly erased. My hands were shaking, but my mind was calm in a strange way, like I had already left emotionally before I physically moved. The house was asleep when I stepped out. The air outside felt colder than I expected. I stood for a moment looking back at the home I grew up in, the same place that once felt safe, now feeling like a question I couldn't answer. And then I walked away. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there after what I heard, after what I felt. But what I didn't realize at that moment was this. Leaving was only the beginning. Because the truth behind that family meeting, the real reason they were talking about me, was something I hadn't fully understood yet. And by the time I did, it might already be too late to go back. After I left that night, I didn't run fast. I didn't even look back again. I just kept walking like my body had decided something my mind was still trying to catch up with. Every step felt heavier than the last, but at the same time, strangely lighter, like I had dropped something I had been carrying for a long time without realizing it. I kept asking myself where it all went wrong. Because it wasn't always like this. There was a time when my home felt like the safest place in the world. I remember mornings filled with noise, my mother calling from the kitchen, my father getting ready for work, my siblings arguing over small things that didn't matter. Back then, even the smallest moments felt normal. Real. What? But things don't break all at once. They change slowly in ways you don't notice until it's already too late. It started with small misunderstandings. I would come home late sometimes, and instead of asking me directly, my family would just go quiet. I noticed the way conversations stopped when I entered the room. The way questions about my day became shorter, colder. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just stressed or too focused on myself. But then came the distance. My friends also noticed I was changing. I stopped going out as much. I stopped answering messages quickly. I would sit alone more often, thinking about things I couldn't explain properly even if someone asked me. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk, it was more like I didn't know how to anymore. At home, the atmosphere kept shifting in ways I couldn't fully understand. My father started asking indirect questions instead of direct ones. My mother would watch me sometimes like she was trying to figure something out without saying it. Even my siblings, who used to joke with me all the time, started choosing silence over conversation. I remember one moment clearly. I had walked into the living room and everyone suddenly stopped talking. Not because of a fight. Not because of anger. Just silence. That kind of silence that makes you feel like you interrupted something important without knowing what it was. I laughed it off that day. I even made a small joke trying to bring things back to normal. But no one really laughed with me. That was the moment something inside me started to shift too. After that, I began noticing more things. Whispered conversations that ended quickly when I entered. Phone calls that stopped mid-sentence. My name being mentioned and then replaced with vague words like later or not now. It felt like I was slowly being kept outside of something that involved me the most. Still, I never imagined it would lead to that night. The night of the meeting. The family meeting I was never invited to. Even now, thinking about it makes my chest feel tight. Because it wasn't just that they were talking, it was how carefully they were talking. Like they were choosing every word so it wouldn't break something fragile. Or maybe so it wouldn't reach me too early. I kept trying to convince myself there must be another explanation. Maybe it was about school. Maybe money. Maybe stress. Families talk about things all the time without including everyone. That's normal, right? But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. Because I could feel the weight of it even without hearing everything. After I left the house, I didn't have a clear plan. I just kept moving through empty streets, passing closed shops and dim lights. Every sound felt louder than usual. Every shadow felt like it had meaning. I pulled my jacket closer, not just because of the cold, but because I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain. I stopped near a small corner shop that was still open. I didn't go in. I just stood there for a while, watching people pass by like nothing in the world was wrong. That's when it hit me the hardest, that life keeps moving even when yours feels like it has stopped. My phone buzzed in my pocket at one point. I looked at it, hesitated, and didn't answer. I don't even know why. Part of me wanted to hear a voice from home. Another part of me was afraid of what that voice might say. Instead, I turned it off. That silence felt heavier than anything else. As the night grew later, I started thinking about everything again. About the meeting. About the words I had overheard. About the way my family looked at me recently, like they were trying to solve something they couldn't say out loud. What did they decide? That question kept repeating in my mind. Because a family meeting doesn't happen for no reason. People don't sit together behind your back unless something serious is being discussed. Something that changes things. I tried to remember if I had done anything wrong. Something big enough for all of this. But my memory kept coming back empty. No clear mistake. No obvious moment. Just small pieces of confusion that didn't fully connect. And that's what scared me the most. Not knowing. Not understanding what I was being judged for. I found a quiet place to sit later that night, somewhere away from main roads. The air felt still, almost too still. I remember staring at the ground for a long time, thinking about whether I should go back, call someone, or just keep walking until morning came. But every option felt uncertain. Because going back meant facing something I wasn't ready for. And staying away meant stepping into something even more unknown. That's when I realized, whatever that family meeting was about, it wasn't just a small conversation. It was something that had already changed the way my life was moving. And somewhere far behind me, in that house I left without warning, answers were still waiting in silence, just out of reach. The night felt longer than it should have. I stayed in that quiet corner for hours, not really thinking in straight lines anymore. My mind kept circling the same thing again and again, the family meeting. The way my name was spoken in that house while I wasn't there. The way decisions seemed to be forming without me even getting a chance to understand what was happening. At some point I stopped trying to make sense of it, because every explanation I came up with felt incomplete. Around me the world kept moving in small, ordinary ways. A distant dog barking. A motorbike passing on the road. A shopkeeper pulling down his shutter. Life didn't pause just because mine had started falling apart. I remember pulling my knees closer, resting my head for a moment and thinking about my mother. Her voice used to be the first thing I heard every morning. Even when she was upset, there was still warmth in it. I kept asking myself, how does someone who once called you lovingly become part of a conversation you are not allowed to hear? That thought stayed with me longer than anything else. But somewhere deep down, another question started growing. What if I was missing something important? What if the reason they were acting like this wasn't what I thought it was? I hated that thought almost immediately, because it meant I didn't understand my own life as much as I believed I did. The next morning came slowly. I didn't sleep properly, just drifted in and out of awareness. When the first light appeared, I stood up and started walking again. My body felt heavy, like I hadn't fully rested in days. I found a small tea stall opening early. I sat there quietly, not speaking much, just watching people begin their day. A few men were talking about work, someone was laughing in the distance, and for a moment I felt like I was watching life from outside of it. That's when I first considered going back. Not because I felt safe, but because not knowing was worse. My phone was still off. I hadn't checked anything. Part of me didn't want to know if anyone had tried to reach me. Another part of me was terrified that no one had. Eventually I turned it back on. There were missed calls. A few messages. Most were from unknown numbers at first. Then one familiar name appeared. My cousin. The message was short. Where are you? They are worried. Please come back. No explanation. No details. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. They are worried. That phrase didn't match the image in my mind of a family sitting together, deciding something behind closed doors. It didn't fit with the words I thought I heard. It didn't connect. Unless I had misunderstood something. Or unless there was more to the story than I had been allowed to see. I didn't reply. Instead, I started walking again. But this time, my steps weren't just about leaving anymore. They were about searching. I found myself thinking back to small moments I had ignored before. My father's long silences. My mother's worried glances when she thought I wasn't looking. Even my siblings, who sometimes looked like they wanted to say something but stopped halfway. There was something there. Something I never paid enough attention to. By afternoon, I ended up near a bus stop I didn't recognize at first. I sat down, watching buses come and go, people getting on with luggage, going somewhere with purpose. I felt stuck between moving forward and going back. That's when I noticed someone sitting a few seats away from me. An older man. He kept looking in my direction, not in a suspicious way, but like he recognized something familiar. After a while he spoke. You look like someone trying to run from a thought, he said calmly. I didn't answer at first. Because he wasn't wrong. He didn't push. Just sat there quietly. After a few minutes he said something that stayed with me. Sometimes families don't talk clearly. Not because they don't care, but because they think they are protecting you from something. That line hit differently. Protecting me. From what? I wanted to ask him more, but he stood up soon after and left, like he had said what he came to say. And I was left with even more questions than before. As evening approached again, I made a decision I wasn't fully ready for. I started heading back, not directly home but closer. Enough to see things from a distance. Enough to understand without walking straight into whatever was waiting for me. My heart kept beating faster as I got closer to familiar streets. Every turn felt heavier. Every sound felt sharper. The city I grew up in suddenly felt unfamiliar, like I was seeing it for the first time. And then I saw it. My house. From a distance, everything looked normal. Lights were on. Curtains moved slightly with the air. Nothing looked unusual. But I didn't go closer. I stayed far enough to just watch. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten again. There were people inside. Not just my family. Others too. Silhouettes moving behind the windows. Shadows of conversation. Movement that didn't look casual. I couldn't hear anything, but I didn't need to. Something was still happening inside that house. Something I was clearly not part of. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what I was even looking at anymore. Because if it was just a simple family issue, why were there more people involved? And why did it feel like my return wasn't expected at all? From where I stood in the distance I could see my home, but it no longer felt like a place I belonged. It felt like a place still deciding something. And I had just arrived too early to know what that something was. I stayed there longer than I should have, hidden in plain sight, watching my own home like it had become someone else's place. The lights inside kept shifting. Shadows moved from one room to another. I tried to focus on familiar details, the gate, the balcony, the small plant near the entrance, but nothing felt the same anymore. Everything looked normal from outside, yet everything inside felt like it was carrying a weight I couldn't see. My chest tightened the longer I watched. I kept telling myself to just leave, to turn around and forget this moment, because coming closer had already given me more questions than answers. But my feet didn't move. That's when I saw the front door open. A few people stepped out first. I couldn't clearly see their faces from where I stood, but I could tell they weren't just neighbors. Their way of speaking, the way they paused before leaving, the way they looked back toward the house, it all felt serious. Then I saw my father. He stood at the door for a moment, not moving, like he was thinking deeply about something. My mother appeared behind him shortly after. Even from a distance, I could tell her posture was different. Not relaxed. Not normal. Something was still unfinished inside that house. And I was standing outside it, completely unaware of what role I was even supposed to play in it anymore. I wanted to go closer. But fear held me in place. Not fear of being caught, but fear of hearing something I couldn't undo. I stepped back slowly into the darker side of the street, where the light from the house couldn't reach me as clearly. My breathing felt uneven. My thoughts kept jumping between anger, confusion, and something I didn't want to name. Why were they meeting like this? Why did it feel so final? A part of me wanted to believe I was misunderstanding everything. That maybe it was just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion in my mind. But the more I saw, the less that explanation made sense. Because families don't usually gather people like this for small things. And they don't usually look that serious when someone is missing. Missing. That word hit me differently this time. Because that's what I was now, technically. I had left without telling them where I was going. I had disappeared into the night after overhearing fragments of a conversation I still didn't fully understand. But even then, something didn't feel right. If I was just missing, why did it feel like there was more structure to everything happening inside? I stayed hidden as more movement happened at the house. A few more people left. Some stayed behind. I couldn't tell who was involved or why they were there, but it felt like some kind of ongoing discussion had been taking place for hours. And I had arrived at the edge of it without knowing the full story. My phone vibrated again in my pocket. This time it was my mother calling. I stared at the screen for a long time without answering. My thumb hovered over the button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. My throat felt dry. What would I even say? Before I could decide, the call ended. Then another message came. Please come back. We need to talk to you. We need to talk to you. Not, we miss you. Not, where are you? Just that. I swallowed hard. Something about those words felt heavier than anything else so far. I looked back at the house again. And that's when I noticed something new. Someone was standing near the window. Not moving. Just watching. And for a second, I felt like I was being seen even from where I stood in the shadows. I immediately stepped further back, heart pounding faster now. My instincts told me to leave completely, but another part of me refused to move without understanding at least something. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Careful. I turned quickly, expecting a stranger or maybe someone from the house. But there was no one. Only the empty street behind me. Still, the feeling didn't go away. I was no longer just watching anymore. Something was watching back. I started walking away, faster this time, trying to leave the area before my mind started creating things that weren't real. But every few steps I kept glancing back. The house stayed in view longer than I wanted. And even as I moved farther, I could still feel it. That meeting wasn't over. Not yet. Later, I found myself sitting near a different street, trying to calm my thoughts. My hands were slightly shaking. I kept replaying everything I had seen, the people, the conversations I couldn't hear, the way my family looked so serious inside that house. And then something else started forming in my mind. What if that meeting wasn't just about me leaving? What if it was already about something that was going to happen next? I didn't want to think that far. But I couldn't stop. Because now it felt like I hadn't just walked away from my home. I had walked away from something that was still in motion. And whatever was being decided inside that house was not finished yet. My phone lit up again. Another message. This time from my father. One line only. Wherever you are, don't come here yet. I froze. My eyes stayed on those words for a long time. Don't come here yet. Not, don't come back. Not, we are looking for you. Just, not yet. And that was the moment everything inside me shifted again. Because now, I wasn't just trying to understand why I left. I was starting to realize I might have left at the exact moment I was supposed to stay. That message from my father stayed on my screen longer than it should have. I kept reading it again and again, like the meaning would somehow change if I looked at it differently. Wherever you are, don't come here yet. It didn't sound like a warning. It didn't sound like anger either. It sounded controlled, careful. Like every word had been chosen for a reason I wasn't allowed to understand. My mind started spinning again. If they were worried about me, why tell me not to come home? If I was truly missing, wouldn't they want me back immediately? That was the normal thing. That was what families did. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. I sat there for a long time holding my phone, not sure what to do next. My body felt restless, like I was stuck between two decisions I didn't fully understand. Go back and face whatever was happening inside that house? Or stay away and keep running from answers that were slowly catching up to me? That's when I noticed something strange. Another message. From an unknown number. No name. No profile picture. Just a simple text. Don't trust what they tell you. You need to hear the full conversation first. I froze. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had the wrong number. Maybe it was spam. But my instincts told me otherwise. Because the timing wasn't random. It came right after my father's message. I looked around instinctively, even though there was no one near me. The street was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched in a way I couldn't explain. My fingers hovered over the message. I didn't reply. Instead, I tried calling the number. It didn't connect. Just ringing, and then nothing. I tried again. Same result. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Whoever sent it didn't want to talk directly. They just wanted me to know something. Or maybe they wanted me to move in a certain direction. And that thought alone made everything worse. Because now I wasn't just confused. I was being guided. I stood up slowly, unsure of where my feet would take me. Every direction felt uncertain. My home was still somewhere behind me. But now it didn't feel like a place I could just walk back into. Not without understanding what I was walking into. I started walking again, this time without a clear destination. Just moving, trying to process everything. My mind kept going back to that house. The people I saw leaving. The serious expressions. The way the meeting inside didn't feel like a normal family discussion anymore. It felt organized, structured, like something planned. And then a new thought hit me sharper than the rest. What if the meeting wasn't about deciding what to do with me after I left? What if it was about what to do if I came back? I stopped walking for a second. The idea didn't make sense at first. I tried to push it away. But it stayed. Because my father's message. Don't come here yet. It didn't sound like protection anymore. It sounded like timing. Like something wasn't ready. Or someone wasn't ready. I swallowed hard and kept walking, but now every step felt heavier. Later that night, I found myself near a bus terminal again. It was more crowded this time, people moving in different directions, voices mixing together. I sat on a bench at the edge, trying to blend in, trying to think clearly. But I couldn't. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. You saw the meeting. You didn't see everything. My hands tightened around the phone. This wasn't random anymore. Someone knew exactly where I was. Or at least knew enough about what I had seen. I looked up quickly, scanning the area. A few people passed by, none of them paying attention to me. But the feeling didn't go away. I opened the message thread again. This time I typed back. Who are you? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who was at that house before you. My heart dropped slightly. Before me? That didn't make sense. My family meeting, it wasn't something that usually involved outsiders. At least not that I knew of. I typed again. What meeting are you talking about? No reply. Just silence. Minutes passed. The crowd around me kept moving, but I felt stuck in place. Like I had stepped into a story that was already halfway written before I arrived. Then my phone vibrated again. One last message. Short. Direct. Go back at midnight. Don't enter the house. Just listen from outside. I stared at it. Go back. Midnight. Listen. Everything inside me told me this was dangerous. Or at least that it wasn't simple. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Because now there were too many contradictions. My father telling me not to come yet. An unknown person telling me to return and listen. A family meeting I was never part of. And a house that suddenly felt like it was holding something I wasn't meant to understand from a distance. I sat there for a long time, debating with myself. Every option felt like it had consequences I couldn't see clearly. But one thought kept returning stronger than the rest. If I didn't go back now and find out the truth myself, I might never understand what that meeting was really about. And worse, I might already be too late to change anything about it. I stood up slowly, my decision still uncertain, but my direction now forming. Midnight was still hours away. And somewhere behind me, in that house full of closed conversations and unfinished decisions, something was waiting for that exact moment to begin again. Midnight felt different from every other hour of the day. The streets were quieter, the air colder, and even the smallest sounds seemed louder. I found myself standing a few blocks away from my house, exactly where the unknown message had told me to come. My heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit. Every step I took to get here had felt heavier, but now that I was close, I wasn't sure if I should move forward or turn back. From where I stood, I could see my home again. Same walls, same lights, same place I grew up. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place holding its breath. I stayed hidden in the shadows just like I was told. I didn't enter. I didn't knock. I just watched and listened. The house looked calm from the outside, but I had already learned not to trust what looked calm anymore. Minutes passed slowly. Then I heard it. Voices. Soft at first, then clearer. I moved closer carefully, staying behind a wall near the gate where I could hear without being seen. And that's when I heard my father's voice inside. I told you he might come back before time, he said. My stomach tightened instantly. Before time? Then my mother spoke, her voice tense but controlled. We had to prepare for both outcomes. Either he leaves longer, or he comes back too early. I froze. Both outcomes? What did that even mean? Then another voice joined the conversation. A voice I didn't recognize at first. Come. Older. He has a right to know the truth, the stranger said. My breath caught. That was the same kind of tone as the unknown messages. So it wasn't just messages. The person behind them was inside my house. I leaned closer, my hands shaking slightly. My father responded immediately. Not like this. Not before he understands everything. And then my mother said something that changed everything. He already saw the meeting. There's no going back from that. My heart pounded harder. The meeting. They knew I had seen it. I stayed completely still, listening. Then the stranger spoke again. That meeting was never about deciding what to do with him. It was about deciding how to tell him what we've been hiding. Silence followed. Heavy silence. Then my father spoke again, quieter this time. His medical reports came back months ago. We didn't tell him because we didn't want him to panic. I felt my entire body go cold. Medical reports? What reports? I pressed myself closer to the wall, barely breathing now. My mother continued. He started forgetting small things. Getting confused. We thought it was stress at first, but it wasn't just stress. My mind tried to reject what I was hearing. No, that couldn't be true. I remembered moments. Small gaps in memory. Times I forgot conversations. Times people told me I had already asked something before. But I always thought it was just tiredness. The stranger spoke again, more gently this time. The condition is early. That's why the meeting was held. The family had to decide how to handle the truth without breaking him. My legs felt weak. I held onto the wall tighter. So that was the meeting. Not about pushing me away. Not about abandoning me. But about how to tell me I was slowly losing pieces of my own memory. My father's voice came again, breaking slightly. We didn't want him to disappear into fear. We thought giving him time would help. My mother added softly. But then he overheard part of it, and left. I closed my eyes for a moment. Everything I believed shifted. The distance at home. The silence. The worried looks. The conversation stopping when I entered the room. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. Fear of how to tell me the truth. I stayed there, frozen, trying to process it all. Then suddenly, I heard footsteps coming closer to the gate. I panicked and moved back quickly, hiding deeper into the shadows. The gate opened slightly. My father stepped outside. He looked around carefully, then spoke into the night. I know you're here. My breath stopped. He wasn't guessing. He knew. I didn't move. He continued, his voice softer now. Please don't hide anymore. You heard enough to misunderstand everything. My hands were shaking. Misunderstand? I stepped forward slowly, my body still unsure but my mind overflowing with questions. I heard enough to know you were deciding what to do with me behind my back, I said quietly. My voice sounded strange in the night air. My mother appeared behind him moments later, tears already in her eyes. We were trying to protect you, she said. I shook my head. Protect me from what? From my own life. The stranger finally stepped out into view. An older doctor. That's when everything finally clicked. He wasn't a family friend. He was a specialist. He spoke gently. You're not being erased. You're being treated. Early memory disorder. That's why things feel confusing sometimes. I stood still. The world around me didn't feel real anymore. Everything I thought was a betrayal wasn't. Everything I thought was rejection was fear. My father stepped closer. We were going to tell you. Just not like this. Not alone. Not suddenly. Silence filled the space between us. I didn't know what to feel. Anger. Relief. All of it mixed together. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why didn't you stop me from leaving? My mother wiped her tears. We tried. But you left before we could explain. For a moment no one spoke. The night felt heavier than ever. Then the doctor said something quietly. There is one more thing you need to know. My stomach tightened again. I looked at him. What now? He paused. And then he said, the reason we said don't come back yet is because we are still not sure how much you will remember tomorrow. A silence fell again. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was something deeper. Because I suddenly understood the real twist. This wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what I might forget after tonight. And as I stood there facing my family, I realized the story wasn't ending with answers. It was continuing with uncertainty. And the next morning, might not remember any of this at all. The night after that felt like it didn't belong to the same world I had been living in just hours before. Everything outside my house was quiet again, but this silence felt different. It wasn't the silence of confusion anymore. It was the silence that comes after truth, when your mind is still trying to understand what your heart already knows. I stood there for a long time, not moving, just listening to the sound of my own breathing. My family didn't rush me. No one forced me inside. My father stayed near the gate, my mother a few steps behind him, and the doctor stood quietly beside them. It felt like they were all waiting for me to decide what I wanted to do with what I had just learned. But the truth was, I didn't know how to respond. Everything I believed about my family, about that secret meeting, about being decided behind my back, had changed in a matter of minutes. And yet, even with the truth in front of me, I didn't feel fully settled. Because understanding something doesn't always make it easier to accept. My father finally broke the silence. We didn't want to lose you in confusion, he said softly. We were trying to find the right way to explain it without making you feel like everything is already slipping away. My mother nodded, wiping her eyes again. We thought if we told you too early, it would break you more than help you. I looked at them for a long time. For the first time since I left that night, I didn't see strangers or people hiding something. I saw fear. Real fear. The kind that comes from loving someone and not knowing how to protect them from something you can't physically stop. I slowly stepped forward. I thought I was being pushed away, I said quietly. My voice didn't sound angry anymore. Just tired. The doctor gently shook his head. You were never being pushed away. You were being watched closely. Your memory condition is early stage but unpredictable. Some days are normal. Some days feel confusing. That's why everything around you started feeling inconsistent. I listened carefully. It explained the gaps I used to ignore. The moments I forgot small details. The times I felt like conversations didn't fully stick in my mind. I always thought it was stress, but now those small pieces had a different meaning. Still, one question stayed in my mind. The meeting, I said slowly. Why did it feel like I was being talked about like I wasn't even part of the family anymore? My mother took a deep breath before answering. Because we were trying to decide how to tell you without overwhelming you, she said. We had to talk about how your condition might affect your daily life. That meeting was not about you as a person. It was about how to support you without making you feel broken. The word broken hit differently. I looked down for a moment, trying to process everything. I remembered how I had interpreted silence as rejection. How I thought distance meant I was unwanted. How I turned small changes into something much bigger in my mind. And I had run from it. All because I didn't understand what was really happening. The doctor spoke again, more gently this time. You did the right thing by coming back tonight. This condition doesn't define who you are. It just means you will need support, structure, and understanding from people who care about you. I nodded slowly, but my mind still felt heavy. Nothing about this was simple. The idea that my memories might become unreliable over time scared me more than anything else. Not because of what I had lost, but because of what I might lose without realizing it. My father stepped closer. We will face it together, he said firmly. No decisions without you. No conversations behind your back from now on. That line stayed with me. No more behind my back. That was the part that hurt the most before. Not the truth itself, but the feeling of being outside of it. I finally stepped forward and stood with them instead of apart from them. For the first time that night, I didn't feel like I was running or being watched or being judged. I felt present. The doctor explained a few more things quietly. Regular checkups. Memory tracking. Simple routines to help stability. Nothing dramatic. Nothing like the fear I had imagined in my head. It was all manageable. Not perfect, but not the end of anything either. As the conversation slowed down, I noticed something I hadn't felt in days. Not full understanding. Not full acceptance. But a calm space between confusion and clarity. My mother reached out and held my hand for a moment. "This is still you," she said softly. "Nothing about you has disappeared." That was the first time I felt tears building in my eyes. Because somewhere along the way I had convinced myself I was being removed from my own life. But standing there, I realized I was still part of it. Just in a different chapter now. The night slowly settled into quiet again. One by one, people went back inside. The doctor left after making sure I understood the next steps. My father stayed with me a little longer outside. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Sometimes silence isn't distance. Sometimes it's understanding without words. When I finally stepped back into my house, it didn't feel like the place I ran away from anymore. It felt like a place that had been waiting for me to return with more understanding than fear. I sat down in my room later that night, looking around at everything familiar. And I thought about the family meeting I had overheard. The secret conversations. The hidden concern. The way I misunderstood it all through fear. It wasn't a meeting about what to do with me. It was a meeting about how to hold on to me. The next morning came slowly. And for the first time, I didn't wake up wondering if I had been left out of something. I woke up knowing I wasn't alone in it. The fear didn't disappear completely. The uncertainty didn't vanish overnight. But something important had changed. I wasn't running anymore. And my family wasn't hiding me away either. We were just learning how to move forward in a life that had suddenly become more fragile, but also more honest. The story didn't end with everything fixed. It ended with understanding. And sometimes, that is the only real resolution life gives.